everyone have the Excel spreadsheet handy?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay, great. So the first item is, well, first of all, let me start by asking, is there any general comments or you know, repositioning that people want, that people think should happen at this point?
Sorry, just a point of clarification, Maureen. Our previous capital list, we assigned numeric codes on them. So what you've done is you've taken an amalgam of what the group think was and what the most important projects were. And then this is what this fed into your proposed 2020. Is that correct?
Exactly. And the total list.
But just to be clear, the proposed 2020 does not necessarily reflect what we have in our budget for this upcoming fiscal year.
Not at all. No,
Okay, thank you.
Some of it is, some of it is not. We can see that, but that's a fair point. And so it may not be something accomplished in this next fiscal year. It may be like right after, and we have to plan for it. But the whole point, and Alan, thank you, great question. The whole point of this list is basically to say, listen, you know, as a responsible trustees, fiduciary for our village, we have to start thinking about, or not start thinking about, we have to put down on paper and come up with a plan that can be executed over the course of the next several years. Whether it's this board, next board, or subsequent boards, there should be a plan in place, which heretofore was not written down quite so in quite such detail. Okay. Any other comments or questions? Okay. So again, this is not, I'm looking at the general capital budget section, and this is not in any particular priority, but I just want to go through each of them. And then we can, if we so desire, we can talk about things that should get done this year and that are high priorities. Okay. And by the way, I haven't altered, other than one item, which I'll get to, I have not altered this, these priorities. Okay. I&I phase 2 and 3. Alan McHugh, we're red hot on this one, and we've gotten a grant on it, but I don't know, do you want to talk about this project, which is definitely in the budget, and you've been doing the lion's share, you and Paul, I think, have been doing the lion's share on this one.
Certainly. We're advertising for the bid on May 18th. The documents will be available for people to request, and it'll be all done electronically on May 20th. So we are moving forward on this project now, since we got sign off from both the DEC and the EFC. And
in the budget, we are also applying for financing. So the budget, sorry, go on, Alan.
No, keep on asking the question, then I'll respond.
Well, I was going to say.
The answer is, yep.
Go on. I was making a statement more than asking a question, but you know the details better than I do.
Yeah. Well, I guess the key issue is we allocated I believe 122,000 for I&I this upcoming fiscal year, of which the engineering component we're not doing through the grant application or financing because of constraints with women-owned minority business enterprises. Given the engineering firm we used, we decided it would be behoove us to exclude that, given how far down the path and everything we did there. The rest of the project will be dictated by that, which is a condition of the EFC. So our engineering component is 50K, and then we're going to do a bond anticipation note for the residual, and then depending on how this project moves forward and whether or not we have to do additional work on this project, it'll be rolled into a bond offering at a later date. But that's going to be subject to how successful this project is in correcting some of the issues we're having at the sewer plant with regard to flows. Is that what you're after?
Yes, and so, perfect. And this is sort of addressing concerns from the DEC. It's sort of
This is not concerns. This is a mandate by the DEC with regard to our sewer plant and our license. So this isn't something, this isn't optional. This is something that we had to undertake, and we got a slight pass and delay on it as a result of the work we had to do on Weewa Dam.
Trustee McHugh, could you just elaborate a little bit for everyone in terms of years 1 through 3 or 1 through 4 in terms of where we're at with that in the DEC?
Well, we did phase 1 years ago. I guess it was 3 or 4 years ago. Phase 2, we got, as I just mentioned, we got a pass on as a result of having to deal with the Weewa Dam. And now, we successfully applied for a grant, got around 30% of the cost, or the anticipated cost of the dam, covered by an EFC grant, and the residual we're going to fund through the EFC in terms of borrowing. But this is phase 2. Then there'll be a post-mortem to see whether or not the success in realigning the sewer lines, how successful it was, what's the impact on the flows on the sewer plant, and then from there, there'll be a decision tree whether we have to do additional work or we've satisfied the DEC in terms of reducing flows through the sewer plant.
Oh,
But everything's dictated on our capacity at the sewer plant's 400,000 gallons per day. They like you to be at 95% of that max. We have, on quite a few occasions, exceeded that volume. So that's where the issues are coming from.
Thank you. And I believe the commitment was 600,000 that was made several years ago?
That was the notional amount.
I beg your pardon? I'm sorry, Alan, I couldn't hear you.
Sorry, that's what the original, it was perceived as a 3-year project, 200K, or a 3-phase project, 200K per annum.
Thank you. Okay, Maureen.
Okay, is there anything, this is sort of, we're pregnant on this one, we're going ahead, we're more than pregnant, the baby's born. And is there any other questions? So this one is definitely budgeted for, at least the work to be done this year. And we are applying, we have a grant in place, and we're seeking financing so that we can get short-term financing and then roll it over to a low interest bond. Any questions about this? This is definitely a priority. It's probably the top priority because it is a project we're actively working on. Anyone have comments on that, or agree, disagree? Okay. If anyone has that they want to fill in here, just let me know in terms of any of the cells that are not completed. The next item we have.
Yep. Just for, I guess the question is this a public document yet or not?
I don't know what determines, what do you mean is a public document?
Well, I'm not sure we necessarily want the estimated cost of this line item showing up, given we're going out to bid on that. That's why I'm asking if it's a public document.
Well, I think we're posting it, so probably. Yeah, so I'll take that off. Got it. Thank you. Next item on the agenda, the list is Pond 3 Weewa Bridge. Again, Alan, you're the expert on this one. Would you mind taking us through this one?
I mean, the issue we've got there is that when we were doing work on the Weewa and we were repointing the dam between pond number 3 and the Weewa, it came to light that the lower substructure of that bridge was compromised. As a result of that, we did put signage up that no multi-axle vehicles can go across, and there's a weight limit signage with regard to that. Question is, obviously, it's an expensive undertaking. And I think, I'd given you the numbers. What are they? The engineering, I believe, was around 50. And then you've got all in, it's a large number. The question is, what do we do here? Do we take the attitude that worst case scenario, we do nothing, and we just take the attitude that we close the road at some juncture if the road becomes more compromised till the village has funds available to tackle that issue? That, to be honest, is the real question. I'm not sure spending money on an engineering study with regard to this at this juncture necessarily makes sense. But that's, obviously, it's open to discussion and opinion.
Trustee McHugh, trucks are still going across, correct? We don't have signs up there now making it a
No,
pedestrian bridge?
We have weight limit signage.
We're waiting on signage?
No, we have signage, which is weight limit signage.
Okay. I saw a pretty heavy truck going across, so maybe we can discuss that offline on how to improve that.
Okay, so the question for us for this meeting is this a top priority that we're going to be able to spend? It's a top priority, right? Of course, it's all these capital projects are, most of these capital projects are top priorities, but is it a project that we're going to be able to spend money on in this next fiscal year, the following, or if not, maybe we take it off the list, or and we leave it off the list until it's it deteriorates further? Because Alan, what I heard you say is that right now the weight limit, not allowing trucks over it, is working. It sounds like I'm paraphrasing, is working, but the bridge could deteriorate further as time goes on, obviously, and at which point we may have to make a decision to repair it or make it pedestrian only. Correct?
To me, that's a fair characterization. I would just clarify, trucks are not allowed to go across it right now. The signage states as such, and we'll have to do greater enforcement if it's being violated. So that's something that the chief can certainly address with regard to that. The question is, passenger cars are fine currently, but it's a question of continued deterioration, and when the engineer says that it is becoming hazardous. But that being said, I don't see us having the funding or the ability to tackle that issue this fiscal year. And I think it has to be on the capital list because it's a high priority item in my opinion. But I mean, the alternative is it's not a main artery within the village, and worst case is it becomes, as you says, a passenger path or a walking path. Sorry.
So I would say take it off the top priority list, and DPW continues to monitor it. And if it becomes an issue, we can make a determination at that point. Because as you said, there are probably we probably cannot afford to redo the bridge. And because it's not a main artery, there may be a less expensive, alternative. So I would take it off the top priority list, keep an eye on it with DPW, keep an eye on it, obviously step up enforcement if that's a problem. And we're keeping it on the capital list, obviously, but this is the top priorities. So is that agreeable to you, Alan?
That seems a logical course of action as far as I'm concerned, but I defer to what other trustees.
Yeah, I will ask everybody. So I can't see people, but Paul?
Sure, I think that makes sense.
Alan Barnett?
Makes sense.
Mayor?
Thank you. I really support this list. I mean, we've all worked very hard on it. And as you stated earlier, one of the main purposes is to have something to pass on to the next board. So there's a continuity of projects, and putting them in priority makes perfect sense. It's a little difficult to make decisions because we're talking about taking out bonds and things of that nature. And what I'd like to see is another column of how each bond would affect taxes for the next fiscal year because of the paying back principal and interest. And so that we could, in other words, when we're picking and choosing which are the priority projects, we would also have the advantage of knowing how much of an impact financially it'll have on taxes over the next, 1 to 10 fiscal years. Or we could just do that with the 3 or 4 priority projects that we see now in terms of getting impact taxes. And then the next board can pick and choose their priorities, and at that time attach a price in terms of increasing taxes. So that would be my suggestion.
Yeah, I've got a question for John. I assume, given we're talking roads and bridges, we certainly would not want to jeopardize the front gate by trying to go for grant opportunities with regard to that. Is that correct, John?
Could you restate? I'm not sure I fully understand.
If I may, John, Alan, the answer is yes, we do not want to do that. And we don't want to apply for CHIP money as well, which is a portion
Right.
of.
Oh, I understand. Yeah, right.
Chip and tar. Yes, I totally agree with you, Alan.
So
yeah, my understanding is if
that,
okay, go ahead.
I think we're basically looking, whatever the cost of the project is, the scope of this bridge appears to be, John Ledwith did a great job with regard to the Warwick Brook Road. We tried to use that as a template if possible. The problem is we're going across the dam, so the DEC involvement would be greater as a result with regard to this roadway. But it appears the costing of this is approximately $500,000. What are we talking? If best case scenario, we roll it into a bond and we do it over 20 years, 20 or 30 years, we're talking 15 to 20K a year. That's the order of magnitude if we could do that.
So it's very, very difficult. Just let's be clear. The best approach is to take the aggregate projects we're looking to finance and price a bond based on that. And it's obviously all based on interest rates and appetite. If you do too small of a bond issuance, the costs start overrunning. The costs start overrunning the benefits in terms of add that to the interest rate, it becomes very expensive. So I totally agree that we should, and the part of it is estimated cost. We can have a provision that says estimated cost based on bond issuance, and then net costs after grants. Some of the road issues are not going to be grants are not going to be available, as we just discussed. But I can put another column in, but we can't really, it's not meaningful until we have sort of an aggregate amount of funding that we need. That's substantial. You can't go out with a $100,000 bond. It becomes impractical.
Yeah, and Maureen, why don't you just put it in context of what the costing was to do the Weewa Dam bond? I think our legal bond counsel and advisory, that was what, 75K?
75K.
That was 75K for a $3.8 million bond issuance, right?
Yeah, that was one.
Right.
And the underwriters.
I just wanted context.
Yep. And the underwriters that we used basically said they underbid us and they would not, too much work for not enough size. So, and the world is changing in terms of what's happening with underwriters, municipal financing, et cetera. So anyway, glad to put a column in. Not sure we can populate it quite yet. All right, so if everybody agrees, we're taking the Weewa Bridge off the top priorities. We're keeping it on the capital list. We're going to approach it as I suggested. DPW, pay attention to it, and then we can put it on the top priorities and make a decision if we need to on that in the near term. Okay. Moving on, the wall. There's a wall on Summit Road that's crumbling. The issue with the wall is that there's a question, again, about ownership. The wall needs to be repaired. As I understand it, Alan, you're the expert again on this, but the wall repaired, but before the roads can actually be repaired up on Summit.
Well, just to be clear, it's the wall is deteriorating. I don't think there's a question, and Brian's firm can comment on that because John Ledwith has spent time with Brian's firm delving into this, but I don't believe the ownership of the wall is in question. The question is we being the
Oh.
village can't repave the roads or do anything with the road till there's remediation with regard to the wall.
Okay, so, just to be clear, is, John, I don't know if you're familiar with the issue, or the mayor. I know you're familiar with the issue, Mayor, but, is the wall ownership determined? Because I think, as Alan said, John Ledwith worked with your firm to figure that out. Are you familiar with the issue?
I think so. I believe so. I remember there was, I think this is a wall where there's a couple property owners, and it kind of splits. And I know that the question about ownership was, I don't believe the village owns the wall. And so once the property owner fixes it, I think Trustee McHugh is right. The village can then address whatever issues are with the road. That's my understanding. I'm not sure if the mayor understands it differently.
Yeah, no, I think that's accurate. I would just like to know, I mean, this could take quite a while to resolve, and I know that we want to get this road paved. Alan, maybe you can check with Jeff and see if we can pave the road and leave just a little patch there, filled in with blacktop or something, and then come back. I don't know if that's practical or feasible.
To be honest, that road's not even on our schedule, given it's a tertiary road, and you know, there's really little we can do till this issue's resolved and rectified to the homeowners and the village's satisfaction before we're going to really be able to do anything on that. I mean, the road's in very poor shape up there. There's no question about that. But it'd be throwing good money after bad to do kind of a Band-Aid when something far greater than a Band-Aid's needed at this juncture. It was on Jeff's list last 2 fiscal years, and obviously it was punted as a result of this outstanding issue. And yeah, I know John's and Brian's firm had dug into it, but I think it's kind of stuck in limbo right now.
Oh, thank you. Okay, so I recall at the last meeting, I had volunteered to deal with this issue, but I don't see my initials on this
I know.
version.
Yeah, I apologize. I thought so too, but I didn't want to put your initials in without checking with you. Yeah, I'll put your initials in. I apologize.
Okay, no problem. So yeah, I'll touch base with Brian and John after the meeting, and we'll pick it up there.
Perfect.
Sounds good.
Okay, let me just fix that. All righty. Sorry, I just want to save it just in case. Okay, next item, the lakes. Three different, there's Weewa, Tuxedo Lake, and Pond 3. So, Alan or Paul, do you want to handle the first 3? Which is Weewa?
So let's remember we have 3 lakes, and they're all 3 different lakes. So
Can I interrupt? I apologize. John, you're not on the right tab on the screen. It should be
Oh,
under.
okay.
Yeah, thank you. That's
Yeah, all right. There you go.
okay. Sorry.
No,
Go on,
no
Paul.
problem.
okay, so just to remind everybody, we've gone through a budgetary process where these things were discussed in some detail. They're all covered to one degree or another in the budget, but obviously the specifics of the program cases have not been fully addressed or agreed to or considered by the board. With respect to the Weewa, we have approved, if you recall, a contract for 5 days of dash harvesting in Weewa Lake. That was recommended by our lakes consultant. There's a contract that has gone out to the vendor there. We're just waiting for it to be signed and sent back for our signature. If our lakes consultant also recommended if funding were available, it would be a good thing to spend an extra couple of days or more on the Weewa to ensure that in the fall, to ensure that we nip and address Eurasian water milfoil while it is still easily nippable and addressable. That was not approved as part of the budget, and we will take a wait and see attitude on that and see whether we can develop some more funding for that going forward. That time period could also be used to address the coontail, which the lakes manager I don't think saw as an extremely pressing issue for the moment. That could be deferred a bit. With respect to Tuxedo Lake, you recall that our lakes manager had recommended some maintenance around the dock areas, the Village Boat Club, and the Tuxedo Club. We are continuing to look at that and are going to discuss with the lakes manager whether or not that really makes sense doing. It was done last year, and there was some concerns about whether that game was really worth the candle. So we are, while there is some funding for that in the water budget, we are still have under consideration whether or not that is an appropriate or the best use of the funds for that. Also, longer term, our lakes manager has recommended herbicide treatment for Tuxedo Lake. That would not be if it occurred at all during this season. The contemplation is that we will continue to look at that over the course of the next year, get better educated on it, look and see what other communities have done, and make a decision on that probably next winter, spring kind of time frame. Pond number 3, the funding for that's included in the budget is for herbicidal treatment in conjunction with dash harvesting at the southern end where it's shallower and the water flows a bit more. We are continuing to look at that and discuss that with our lakes manager in terms of whether there would be an alternative management that would obviate the need for dash harvesting at the southern end, either by adjusting the flow into pond number 3 so that we can be more assured that the herbicidal treatment would be more effective in that area. But that's currently the plan for pond number 3.
Okay, and then and I have to go back to one of the items, but there's another item in pond 3. Alan McHugh, do you want to address it, which is potential leakage into pond number 3 to be investigated after results from water quality tests received?
Yeah, I mean, the issue we got there is we sent lakes manager report to our engineering firm. They, are looking, there was nothing sinister in the water quality report, which should raise alarm. So, we had discussions about this a couple months ago, and we decided not to move forward. I think it was a CapEx of around $30K to put cameras down in the lines. There are other options we might look into, but I think the water quality report brought to light that this doesn't need to be on the highest priority. It's certainly something that should be investigated, but to me, it wouldn't indicate that this should be on the list for this year.
Okay. All right. So just on that item, Paul, I want to get everybody's agreement or disagreement with that comment, which is that we're going to take off pond number 3, potential leakage into on the top priority list. We're keeping on the capital projects list. So potential leakage into pond 3 to be investigated after results from water quality test received. The water quality test was received. It doesn't need, at this stage, we're not recommending a need for anything further. We're going to keep an eye on it in the general capital projects list. Everybody agree with that? Anybody who doesn't agree with that, please just say no.
Thank you. We are talking about potential sewer leakage, just to be clear. And I'm very happy to hear that the last water test came out with no negative impact. Now, in term and pushing it off, yeah, that's fine. I think though that we should agree that we're going to test frequently because it is an old pipe and it could burst and sewage could leak into pond 3 and then obviously into the Weewa. So how about we put a caveat on that and move it with a commitment to test the water much more frequently than we would any other body of water, I would defer to Trustee Gluck and Trustee McHugh in terms of how frequently might make sense. But that's the caveat I'd like to put on it.
Alan McHugh and Paul Gluck, okay? I mean, I think that's what we were saying by putting it in the capital projects list, but
And to be clear, it wasn't a singular test. I mean, we have our lakes manager testing the lakes throughout the year, and that's part of the $50,000 we spend for the lakes manager with regard to testing and monitoring the lake and looking at trend and data analysis. So this is something, obviously it was flagged, it was a cause for concern. We alerted him to it. His water quality report didn't indicate anything untoward. There is a high nutrient loading in that lake, but that's a function of many different things. So I think it's definitely something we want to observe and continue observing. And if we see any deterioration or changes, understand what potentially is causing these deteriorations and changes. Yeah, I think we're all on the same page that we're agreeing we want to monitor it. It's just, I don't think it's something that, we should jump to do right now. There's other things that are probably higher priority, but this could all of a sudden go from, a number 2 to a number 1 if all of a sudden something changes. And that would be whatever water testing our lakes managers do.
Yeah, I agree completely.
okay. Anybody else? Anybody that disagrees, please say so. Okay. Next thing, trying to move it along, is that on this list of projects, we just talked about Tuxedo Lake. Again, the way I've broken up this spreadsheet, it says general budget. Tuxedo Lake, we did not allocate anything from the general budget to treat Tuxedo Lake. It was the water budget. Should we leave this as a top priority for this coming fiscal year? I mean, again, it's always on the project list. And just put it, and just leave it in the water budget?
If I may, didn't we agree that even though we didn't attribute the spending to a particular body of water, that all the dash treatments, we could shuffle them around based on need? We just wanted to confirm the contractor. Is my recollection correct, Trustee McHugh?
To me, the answer to that is yes. What we had discussed was specifically with regard to pond number 3, and if we could raise the water level, we wouldn't do dash there, and we'd do more dash on the Weewa. The issue obviously is the delineation between the water budget and the general budget, pond number 3 and the Weewa, and the commitment to do dash harvesting on those bodies of water fall into the general, while Tuxedo Lake, depending on what we're doing, falls into the water budget. So the answer, that's a long-winded answer. My understanding is analogous to yours.
Thank you.
Okay, so to my question, should we take this out of the general budget and just leave it in the water budget at this point?
Sorry, take what out, Maureen?
So item Tuxedo Lake is a top priority in the general budget. It's also a top priority.
This is cell or line number 7 we're talking about.
Row 7, yep.
Yes, the answer, yes. Shouldn't be in
Okay.
2 places. Correct.
Well,
It's also line 22, right? 23 under water budget, or is that a different
Correct.
Well,
evaluation?
Paul, I don't, is it fully funded from the water budget? Is that something?
Yes.
No, I'm sorry. Should it be fully funded from the water budget is what I guess I'm asking. And the answer is yes to that? Okay. Fine, then I'll leave it in the water budget. Fine. Okay. Okay. Leaving in, so Weewa, we've already allocated 14,000 in the budget for the Weewa treatment. We've already allocated 11,000 in the budget for the Pond 3. So I would suggest leaving those items in the top priority list. Anyone disagree? Okay. DPW replacement salt spreader. Alan, I guess
Yeah, I mean, the quick and dirty is on that, obviously that was a discussion point in the budget process. We did allocate a one annual payment in this upcoming fiscal year budget. What we're doing is looking at a myriad of options. Obviously, we're just getting pricing and everything, so we've got a way to go with regard to that. But obviously, the big issue was extending the term of the payment in order to better reflect the lifespan of the piece of equipment. So, i.e., doing a 10-year note or something along those lines. So, we do have it in this year's fiscal budget. The notional amount is around 175K. I believe we reduced it to $25,000 in this upcoming fiscal year budget as being the annual payment for this piece of equipment.
That is correct.
Yep, that is correct. Okay. So that's already, the funds are already allocated, and hopefully we're starting to look at financing and purchasing this one. Probably in I guess we talked about it, looking at it in like September-ish, or whenever the season is, because you don't need it until, because it's a salt spreader, you don't need it until the winter.
Yeah,
Okay.
but just so we're clear, when for whatever reason the municipality is, it's not monthly payments like a regular homeowner. It's a one-off. It's annual payments, and they're front end loaded.
Got it. Okay, so it doesn't matter.
Whilst we're not getting it to September, the payment is all of it's going in this upcoming fiscal year.
Okay. Yep. Perfect. Yeah. Thank you. Okay. Leaving that on the top priorities. Anything else in the general budget top priority list? Add. Anything else? Anyone? Okay. Then one other thing that we can just quickly talk about is the normal operating budget items. So these are things that are not capital projects necessarily, but normal, maintenance projects. It should be in the normal budget. So turning to that, row 15, maintenance on roads. We discussed this at the last capital project list discussion, that there should be certain amount of general maintenance that occurs in our annual budget. And in this one, we had phase 1 and phase 3, implement replacement and resurfacing plan for Clubhouse Road as needing immediate repair, needing immediate repair. Sorry, there's a typo there. That is being done in this fiscal year, as I understand it. So
Correct.
I'm going to move. Yeah. So as soon as it's completed, I will move it to the completed project tab. Completed tab. Okay, but I'll leave it here for now.
Yeah, and there'll be Jeff's liaising with the chief, but there'll be an announcement going out. Jeff's meeting with the paver today, and they're estimating it'll be 2 days work, and that will be commencing next week some days. Yeah, and they're just working that out.
Okay, great. And then the next item, which is not any, there's no cost associated with that, is that Jeff assessed the next set of roads needing immediate repair and development. I'll liaise with Jeff to see what out of his 175 or whatever the amount of the budget was. Item
175.
175. Yeah, that yeah. I'll liaise with Jeff to make sure that he's got that list and how much it's going to cost out of that 175 budget. But we'll leave this on here as normal maintenance. If anyone disagree with those two statements? Leaving them here until the row 15 is completed, and then row 16, we just have to add, this is a priority, but it's general maintenance, and I'll for everybody's information, we'll figure out, after speaking with Jeff, what his plan is and how much it's gonna cost. Okay. And again, I don't see anybody's faces here, just the spreadsheet, so I can't tell if somebody raises their hand or something, so please just interrupt. Okay, and then continued annual maintenance on the Weewa Dam should be included in the DPW budget. Alan, I think it is. The estimated cost is between $5,000 and $10,000, correct?
Correct, and we put $5,000 in upon Mike Quinn from Schnabel Engineering, who did all the work with regard to this project. He gave me an estimate of what he believed was an appropriate amount, and that's what Jeff put in his budget. Great,
thank you. Okay, there's probably a bunch of other things that should go in this row, but what I did is I took our capital project list and just took the things from that were sort of normal annual operating maintenance items. So these are the only items that I saw in the capital list that should be included in this section, a normal operating budget. If anybody else sees anything, just let us all know, and we can talk about that next time. Unless somebody has something now they want to add to this section. Okay. Then moving on to the water budget. Lakes management allocation. This is what we talked about earlier, which is the Tuxedo Lake plan. So I just moved it and updated the estimated cost to say that we're still investigating what the proper approach is. So any comments on row 23? No? Okay. Water loss leak detection system. Alan Barnett, so this is we've talked about this quite a bit, but I don't know, Alan Barnett or Alan McHugh, do you want to mention anything on this?
I mean, to me, this is in the scope of what we may or may not be doing with regard to the pipe under Tuxedo Lake, where replacing aging infrastructure and obviously going after a grant opportunity to reduce the village's outlay with regard to that. That kind of fits in line item number 26, 24, and 26 are somewhat interchangeable there. Obviously, the one thing we don't have on this list that we need to is the control panel at the water plant. And, we had some discussions about it at the last meeting where it's over 20 years old. Jeff is having problems getting replacement parts with regard to the data control center. John Ledwith and Jeff have worked and got pricing from Westech. That order of magnitude is around $80K for the replacement of the computer system there. They're going out to a separate vendor to get pricing there. I do think we'll have to fold the engineering system in to give us advice on the different systems, or if they think we should be going down a different course. So that's something that needs to be thrown into this this category.
Okay, I just added it. Anybody disagree with that? I said water plant control panel. The description of work, difficult to find parts, needs immediate replacement. DPW and Alan McHugh are the guys that are involved, and the estimate.
Just put John Ledwith, because John's been very, very much involved in this.
Okay. And then the estimated cost is $80,000. Anybody object to putting that on the top priority list? Okay, so I have the lakes management, leaving it alone. Just to be clear on the water loss detection system, I understand, I'm trying to figure out how you want me to revise this, but we had one point investigated a data logger.
I mean, we went all the way down that path, and then the problem we've got which is every resident in Tuxedo knows apart, which is cell phone reception can be problematic, and we were not able to get around that obstacle, which would allow the data loggers to work effectively. So on one sense, we explored it. We did testing within the community, both within Tuxedo Park and down in the East Village. And we found that the systems were unable to work where we are. So we're back to problem solving and dealing with the issue in a different manner. So basically back to square one with regard to that, which goes back to, the old-fashioned leak detection with somebody putting headphones on and walking all the pipes and listening for noise and doing it that way.
Okay, so that's something that is not in the current budget for the water budget, correct? Hiring somebody to go around with earphones on and listen for it, correct?
Yes and no. I mean, there's a couple line items where it can be taken from and has been taken from in the past. Have we made the conscious decision to hire somebody and do that? Not as of yet. Do we have the funding for it? Yes.
Okay. So am I leaving this on the top priority list or are we saying, sorry, you're saying, Alan, let's see what happens with Tuxedo Lake, because that could be a very big leakage, the replacement pipe. And that could cure a lot of our leakage problems. So we don't need to necessarily have this as a top.
I wouldn't characterize it that way. Alan Barnett might have a different perspective, but I mean, the issue is, just to give you an idea, we pumped 26, in Q1 we pumped, I'm not going to go those through. The issue is we've got enormous water losses and we have to find them. And I don't think it's going to be one thing in particular. I think, we found a leak, which was at the old Swanson property, which was from the road into their boathouse. That's been corrected. We've seen a slight drop in water loss and pumping as a result of that. But I see this as a cultural change, and when we're looking to replace one of our DPW workers who's retiring this year, I think there might be some job description changes and reallocation of resources dedicated to this, where we invest in the leak detection system that found us the leak on the corner of Chasteau Lane, and we empower an employee has to spend X days a week searching for leaks, and that's part of the job description. So I think it's very high priority. It's just a question of how we choose to allocate our resources with regard to finding water leaks.
Okay. So
Alan Barnett, would you agree with that, or?
Yes, I think the biggest step we can take is the pipe under the big lake. That could hope, that's an old pipe, could hopefully represent a significant amount of water loss, but we're running at least 50% of water loss, half the years.
Okay. All right. So I'm leaving that. I'm adjusting it. You can look at how I adjust it and give me your comments afterwards. The only other item on this list for the water budget is, which I guess should be moved, because I don't think it's going to cost anything. It should be moved to the no immediate impact on budget section, which is water system emergency. We have talked about assess need and feasibility of developing and implementing a backup plan if water is not available for more than 24 hours. So I'm just going to move that to the no immediate impact on budget, correct?
Yeah, but I mean, I guess my question is you take out of there, does that lessen its importance? I mean, it kind of dovetails why we have to do what we have to do with, you know, God forbid the pipe under Tuxedo Lake breaches or breaks, you know. Yeah, I mean, they're kind of interwound. I mean, I have no problem keeping that there because it's higher priority, and just having, you know, we don't have a dollar cost involved as of yet.
Right. So the way I've laid out the top priority list is if you scroll down, you'll see the next section is no immediate impact on budget. So I think all of these are priorities. I'll leave it wherever you guys want it. Yeah. So but it is on the top priority tab. So it's however you guys want to do it. I think technically the way I've laid it out, which you may not agree with, it should go on the top of the no priorities. Sorry, no impact on
Yeah,
budget.
I'm fine with that from my perspective.
Okay. Again, if anybody objects, please just let us know. Okay,
Marie-
I've done that.
Marie, you could add JL as responsible under the blank for responsible party.
Okay, thank you. Okay, and we talked about the replacement pipe under Tuxedo Lake. I don't know if there's anything else you want to say, Alan. Maybe give us an estimate of costs and the availability of a grant.
Well, I mean, we authorized at last meeting $1 spent of $14,900 for the engineering side. Estimated cost is between $250 and $300K. And then potential grant from that is 60% of that cost. So best case scenario is if we're able to write a convincing argument on why we should get the grant and everything, the grant amount is 60% of the total cost of the project. So obviously that's what's so compelling about going after water grants.
Yes, and your point, I think, is that about the replacement which relates to the last point you made, which is the the water system emergency assessment, is that this is a 90-year-old pipe that feeds a large area of the park. If it broke or had a major leak, we would not have service to a large part of the park, particularly and including Tuxedo Park School, I think you said.
Correct. So we'd be looking forward to seeing what John Barnett's and Gluck's response to satisfying that water demand would come from.
Yes, so better not to have to deal with it. The emergency system is basically your point, and it is a very old pipe. So that should be on our water budget top priorities.
Sure. I'll give you a highlight. Don't get your hopes up.
Oh, about the emergency backup plan?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So anything else on the water budget that needs to be added? We added the water plant control panel. Okay. Hearing nothing, I move on to the no immediate impact on budget. The first item is the water system emergency assessment. The next no immediate impact on budget is maintenance of roads. Develop a plan to avoid water settling on roadways and then freezing. Assess efficacy of road gullies and drainage. That was, again, just an assessment. Is this something that I have done a little bit of work, and Jeff basically told me there's very little when we talked about it, because I gave him specific roads. He said there's really very little you can do on some of the roads other than make sure you salt and remove the ice as soon as it.
Yeah, I guess my comment is we're making a conscientious effort to upgrade the catch basins. One, improve the level they are with the road, because there was a one up on Pine Hill and Ridge, which was an absolutely nightmare. It looked like a hazard. There's one on the Causeway. Jeff just repaired last week the one when you come in Tuxedo Park on the right-hand side of the road, just past the keep. So there's a concerted effort by the DPW to improve them, get the elevation of the catch basins to the correct elevation so they don't look like a hazard and a massive gully where you think your axle is going to snap if you go into them. So Jeff is, as roads are being paved, and Clubhouse Road, we've taken out all the catch basins, prepared them, put drainage gullies across in anticipation of the road paving. So this is, I think this kind of dovetails with the road paving and road replacement. These things dovetail together.
Okay, so I would say I'm going to take this off the immediate, the top priority list, because, and maybe put it into work in progress / completed work, the completed work tab, because I've had the conversation with Jeff, and his, as you say, very little you can do other than upgrading the catch basins. So, and salting when it gets icy. So if no one disagrees, I'll move that to the sort of completed work, noting it's still a work in progress. Is that okay? Okie doke. Next item is water loss detection. I think we talked about that. I think we should take this off the top priorities because, as you said, it's already in the budget impact section and has to do with
Yeah, it's in the line item above.
Yeah, it's the line item above. So I'm going to delete that unless anybody objects. Okay. Sorry, I'm doing the work in progress. Okay. The next thing was the water system emergency, but I just moved that up to the top line. So I'm deleting it here. And then the other, again, this is in no particular order. The village office, we had talked about, and I had done work several years ago, before I was on the board, about assessing the viability of selling property where village office is located. Right now probably is not, may not be the best time, who knows, to actually sell it. But the concept was, we need to assess the viability of selling the property, and we had gotten a sort of an assessment in the past of roughly $550,000 for the village office property. And then we have to do an assessment of office space and records maintenance and storage, where they would be held. So what are people's views on this line item? Is it a top priority? Anybody have a view of whether it's a top priority?
I don't think it's a top priority, but it's something that we should certainly look at.
Okay, and the time, it's on our capital project list. The question is it something we should be looking at immediately, within the next year?
Well, I mean, isn't the question is we it's a way for us to monetize something and then generate revenue from it, one, in terms of building permits and everything, and then two, you've got something coming on the tax roll. So I think it certainly needs to be there for those reasons in itself. Are we seriously thinking about doing anything on that right now? My guess is no, but I certainly think it should be somewhere in the discussion, but also in the same thing is, if you move village office, where you replace, where you're going to put it, and where we're going to have public meetings, and are we doing everything remotely going forward? And then maybe the argument for having a village office is greatly reduced. So, I mean, there's a kind of myriad of different issues embedded in that, but I certainly think it should be somewhere on this list.
And and the list that you're talking about, just to be clear, you're talking about the top priorities list, because it is on the capital projects list. So I have personally, I think it's something that should be investigated in the next year. Doesn't mean we have to act on it, but we should have it laid out. We've done a bit of work in the past on assessing the property value. And by the way, for the reasons you just discussed, it's a pretty nice piece of property. It would bring something on the tax rolls. It brings more residents to the area. It's already developed. So the question ultimately is the current assessment of the value, and then where would the village office move to, or the need for sort of space for the village office. So the ultimate question for us is that it's something we want to use our time with in the next 6 months. You know, we can say when we need to do this, but it should be in the next year, year and a half is what our top priority list is saying. So if the answer, so I would suggest leaving it on the top priority list. And then, because I think it is something we should be looking at certainly in the next year, year and a half. Anybody disagree? Okay. All right, so the next item, now my row 34, I think it was 35, water meters, water loss distribution system. Alan, we were developing a plan for testing and replacing malfunctioning water meters. I think the plan was that once we got something reported or something, that we'd replace that. But is there a difference?
Yeah, basically our policy has been is, you know, if somebody is disputing their water bill, we being the water department are more than happy to take the meter out, put a new meter in, send the old meter to underwrite or to test how effective it's been and deal with it that way. So we are testing our meters. We've been doing it more ad hoc in the sense that somebody has an issue. That's how we're offering to rectify it. The interesting thing is every meter that we've taken out, irrespective of the age, has come back conforming to the guidelines. So you know,
it wasn't broken.
The bottom line, it wasn't broken and it was accurately reflecting consumption.
Okay, so
we're doing it on the answer is we're doing it on a piecemeal basis in response to customers' issues.
Okay, do we want to develop a program for testing and replacing malfunctioning water meters, or continue the process that we're doing right now as a top priority? Again, it's on our capital list, but as a top priority.
I mean, our one dream was that we could do this all remotely, and then we wouldn't have John Bello walking around the neighborhood, people's backyards reading meters. But, you know, this is something where our meters are running accurate and everything. And I believe John Ledwith had looked into this around 3 or 4 years ago. It's $250,000 investment to replace meters, put in remote control ones. That's a large ticket item. Would I like to do that at some future date? But I'd far prefer to solve all our water leaks, get our water rates down, then tackle this issue. But that's me personally.
I would concur with that. So I would suggest, and for people to comment, that we delete this as a top priority, obviously leaving it on our capital projects list.
Fine by me.
Anybody else? Anyone object? Okay, moving on to the next item. Hearing no objections. Hydrants. Identify hydrants with low pressure issues and discuss with chief. I think that we should leave this on the top priority list. And then we'll have to come back to figure out what needs to be done, what the plan is. But you know, we should leave it on there. And if I will start investigating if people are okay leaving it as a top priority. Any objection? Water plant filters. Finalize maintenance plan to eliminate future needs to shut down filters for major rebuild. This is just a plan. This is not expenditures at this point.
Yeah, I mean, I would say John and Jeff are well down that path to rectifying that. So I don't think it's, you know, it kind of goes from within our operating plan now versus anything else.
Okay, so it's become business as usual, basically.
Yes, we're obviously institutionalizing procedures in order not to get a repeat of what we had with the 2 water filters.
Got it. So I'm going to put it in the completed work. Okay.
Do you agree with that, Barnett?
Yes.
Okay. Anybody disagree? Okay. Moving right along. Website. We were looking into upgrading the website to comply with the American with Disabilities Act and online payments. Mayor, you were, I think personally this is a top priority for me. because we're not in compliance, I don't believe right now. I think this is something that we should leave as a top priority. Anybody disagree with that? Okay. Other systems, assess cost of installing projection systems in meeting room. To be honest, with a tight budget, I would not make this a top priority, but maybe I'm short-sighted on that and not thinking about future communication needs.
If I may, I think that if you take a look back, hold on. If you take a look back now on this, when we wrote it, we weren't really talking about COVID. And I think we might want to take a second look at this regarding putting some sort of system in place in the boardroom, excuse me, in the village hall, where we can continue with Zoom meetings, even if it's not for us. In other words, if we're back in the village physically, in the village office, people might want to Zoom in and look at the meetings. I think it's been pretty successful. So in that case, I would keep it as a top priority.
Okay.
Yeah, I agree with David. I mean, I think all we need to do is look at the attendance on the meetings by having Zoom, which would argue that we're able to reach a far greater amount of residents do want to listen to these meetings. So having that functionality and, being self-service at the bar meetings, somebody attending can never see what's going on. So having the ability to have a display electronically so everybody knows what people are talking about, I think that would be hugely additive. Obviously, the question is what's the cost on that? But I think it's certainly something well worth exploring. Whether or not we can afford to do it's certainly another question.
Fair point.
One of the things we have done while we were still trying to sort out whether we would be having meetings, continue to have meetings in Village Hall or outside, is we do have and have obtained a larger screen, a 27-inch screen and a laptop with a webcam that is in Village Hall, waiting to be used. So just to bear that in mind as we assess other systems, that that sort of halfway step is there, at least initially.
Okay, great. So we're leaving this here and we can talk about, prioritizing when to get that done. Okay, perfect. Anybody object to leaving that there? Line 39, I guess it is, row 39, excuse me. No, sorry. Other systems, this is row 38. Okay, row 39, equipment replacement plan. I think we're already in the process of doing this, is develop a schedule and costing replace the equipment used by DPW. Alan, we are really doing that already, right?
Correct.
Okay.
That's been a conscious decision. First was getting vehicles that we weren't using but had on our insurance policy off. We liquidated the vehicles we weren't using, and there's a far more disciplined approach with regard to replacement vehicles. And the chief has implemented the same on the police vehicles, because we get in this quandary where you have a vehicle and instead of spending our maintenance budget was $4K and we had a $12,000 budget, and obviously that's a year's payments of a new vehicle where you don't have these problems. So these issues are being looked at, and policies have been developed both in DPW and police.
So Alan, could I ask a question? So is there a schedule in both those areas? In other words, a replacement schedule going out multi-years, or is that still under development, or is that what you to develop?
Sorry, Jeff's under development, well formed and evolved, and that will be coming out in short order. With regard to the chief has put together a proposal, and it's been a discussion point, but there is a formal proposal out there.
Great, thank you.
Okay, perfect. Next, so I think that's it. Oh, no, sorry. Let me just make sure that's it. Oh, We Want Beach Club, I apologize. We had an item, identifying price necessary and recommended upgrades, i.e. replacement of children's swing set.
Well,
So,
Paul can speak to that because he met with the Weewah Beach Club and Jeff with regard to the safety of said swing set.
So there is a wooden play set there that is pretty badly deteriorated, and it has sort of, yellow police tape around it. So that will be taken down, for safety reasons, obviously. And I think for the moment, it doesn't make any sense to have, a replacement item there as a priority list. So I think you could take the, what's being done in terms of removal is underway, and I think we can deal with the question of replacement in sort of due course as we figure out what's happening with the club and that property.
okay, perfect. I would agree with that. Anybody disagree with removing that item for the top priorities? Okay, so I think we're done on the top priority list unless anyone wants to add anything. Okay, so the question becomes, from this perspective, how do we want to proceed to the next stage? The next stage is determining, out of the general budget, by the way, which we only have a couple items, which things, I think, actually, now that I'm looking at the general budget, everything that's on the general budget really is stuff that's work in progress. So I'm not sure we need to, or been funded. So I'm not sure that we need to prioritize any of those items because they're already in process and already funded. So it's the I&I phase 2 and 3. We've talked about that, or phase 2 it should really be. The wall, and David, you said you were going to pursue that. And
Correct.
John, yep. And
Correct.
so the lakes management, we have, that's a whole work in progress right now, and I think everybody's on top of it. And the DPW replacement salt spreader is something we're already doing. So I think the immediate priorities, sort of, we're taken care of and are either, or funded, and part of there's a plan. So I think that we should just get status updates on these projects at our regular board meetings. Do people think that makes sense, or do they have other perspectives?
Fine by me.
Okay. Hearing nobody else object, I think that's the way to proceed on that. The water budget, we can go through the items on the water budget, but again, most of them are either funded or well on the way. Lakes management, I think that's a whole progress and plan that we're going to talk about at some point once a firm decision is made about what to do. Water loss leak detection system, I think we talked about that, and we're really not going ahead with that. We're just going to rely on old-fashioned, the earphone listening devices. And we're going to see what happens with the replacement pipe. The water plant control panel. So that's the only item that has not been funded, but there are funds available, theoretically at least, in the water budget to fund that. And that's something that I think has to, it's, Jeff is already looking at, or John Ledwood, excuse me, is already looking at vendors, et cetera, to get that done, because that's something that has to be replaced because we can't get parts. So I think that's a top priority that we don't need to say needs to be done in the next couple of months. We don't need a timeline, it's already underway. And the replacement pipe under Tuxedo Lake, that's already underway as well. So is there anything in this list? I don't think there's anything in this list that we need to talk about prioritization. And we have names assigned to each element as well. So I don't think anything really needs to be done on that. Just as, again, a status update maybe every regular board meeting. Does that make sense? Anybody object to that approach?
Not at all.
Okay, now the work, no immediate impact on budget work. We, there are a limited amount of, everybody has a limited amount of time. So this one has a bit more items that need to sort of talk about in terms of timing. So for instance, the water system emergency plan or whatever, that's pretty, I guess that's a pretty high priority based on our old infrastructure. When do we think that, how do we want to handle that? Should we say, Alan and Paul, would you be able to sort of give us your insights in like 3 months, 4 months, something like that?
Oh, I think you can have initial insights probably much sooner than that. So I don't.
So give me a,
Let
yeah.
me leave it at that, because this is really a function of figuring out what kind of capacity we have in terms of our current usage. And there are a very limited number of things that can be done to back up that capacity.
Okay.
So
So can
we
I
have to-
say,
So
sorry.
it's sort of a, this is an assessment of feasibility, really. What can
Yes.
or should we do? What can we do in terms, and the answer may be we can do very little
Right.
in terms of that. So it's really a question of first getting us to that first
Call them right now.
and seeing whether we want to do more on that.
right. So Paul, what do you think there? July, August board meeting, which July board meeting? That's a couple months.
Sure. Sure, that would be.
Sorry, I'm just typing it in
Sure.
so I don't miss it. Okay, and then the next item is the village office. So, David, what do you think about that? Getting the sort of accessibility or assessment, excuse me, of I think the value of the property and also where we can move our office space. Would you say
Right,
something like?
Right, as you mentioned earlier, we have the one assessment from several years back, and it was about 500,000. And then in terms of looking for other spaces, until we were to have a space and an estimate of construction costs, it really isn't something that we can decide on until then. And that's a lot of work to pick a location and then estimate construction. And so I just don't know how quickly this could come about, or if it's worth pursuing 100%. I will look into it, and then I can report back to you during a regular meeting.
Sure. And this is, believe me, this is just the assessment. So I totally get it. So what we're just putting down, it's estimated duration, but really when the feedback would come back. So what are you comfortable with in terms of, initial feedback on, where possible places we would be able to put the office, and where it could go, and then maybe initially, is it even worthwhile? Do you think that would be?
Trustee McHugh and I have a secret location in mind that we haven't divulged yet, which could be a good alternative. But we'll have to look into it, and maybe we can get some space planning done and some rough estimates done. But yeah, I would say that this is something I could accomplish during the next quarter.
Okay, so I'm going to put down, if that's okay, initial insights August board meeting. Is that okay?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. Yeah. All righty. Okay, hydrants, that's me, and I can get initial insights by the July board meeting, if that's okay? Or June board meeting, I can even do June, sorry. This should not take longer than that. So I'll have something and we don't have anything so far that's in the capital list that's on the June board meeting. So if that's okay with everyone, I'll do that by the June board meeting. And then we have the website assess cost of upgrading website to comply with Americans with Disabilities Act and allow online payments. Mayor, when do you think you'd be able to get an assessment of that?
I can have that done by the June meeting.
Perfect. Okay. And then projection system.
Same.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. And let's see what else. I think that's all we have. Wow. All right. Anything else that needs to be added? This has been great. We've gone through our top priority list and we've got dates. It's great. And a plan for reporting. Excellent.
All right, terrific. Thank you, Trustee Cohen. That was excellent. That was a long and difficult task. So let's move on to employee performance review process. And do we have a copy available to put up for John? Can someone send a copy to John?
Yes. Yeah. Give me a second because I'm slow at this. Just a second. Personnel.
Okay. Do any of the other trustees want to start off the conversation? This was proposed, I guess it was last meeting, the idea of putting something together for the performance reviews.
Right.
I have an 11:30 meeting, which I would like to go to. Can we prioritize and conclude by then and put the rest other items on the agenda for Friday's meeting?
No, don't worry. We have an executive session Friday and we can't keep cutting off chunks. Listen to the tape after the meeting. I don't think there's any critical votes. If there's something specific you want to move up now, Alan, we can do that and get that done by 11:30. But in terms of pushing stuff off or tabling stuff, I don't think that's appropriate right now. We're having so many meetings, too many meetings. Let's just move through.
So can I suggest, Alan Barnett, one of the items that you had, I think, the most comments on, because you're involved in this, is the clerk treasurer replacement. Maybe, and then the employee performance review process. Maybe, can we move that up? Because I think I would say.
Let's do that now. John, can you throw up my document on clerk treasurer replacement, please?
Yep.
Thank you. Okay, so we have to replace Debbie. Everyone knows that. And we currently don't have a specific time frame for when she's leaving. Debbie, if you want to jump in on anything since we're talking about you, please do. So the idea was to put together some sort of potential hierarchy for doing this search. And I view it as a search, like one would hire a search firm. And I'm thinking that if you look at the diagram, I'm thinking that one of the first entities we might approach is our accountant or someone similar to see if they have any experience or any interest in heading the search for us. That would mean that they would help with the job description. You can roll that down to the second page. Thank you. If they would have any interest in doing this for us. And under the outline section, I discussed potential steps that might take place to get this done. And those are in front of us. I think everyone on the board's read them, so I don't need to repeat them. And so this is an approach I laid out for the board to consider. And that's where we stand right now. Thank you. So if any of the trustees have comments, that'd be great.
Well, the only thing I can think of, we don't necessarily have resources.
Somebody's got their phone on mute and somebody in the background talking.
Yeah. Why don't we let Alan Barnett talk, since he seems like he's got a time issue?
Yeah, I've been talking to Debbie, as I promised I was going to have for next week a summary of the of some initial thoughts on how we'd approach. I'm looking at Debbie's I'm looking at Debbie's analysis of where she's spending time, and looking at the civil service job requirements. I think that this is an opportunity for us to really re-examine the way the village office operates. I think it's a two-person job that I think that we could have an assistant village clerk helping. I think that just like we have the police chief is in charge of hiring officers for the police department, subject to our board approval, and I think so should the village clerk be in charge of recruiting somebody for the to assist him or her. I think there's a question of how Denise fits in. And I would like to really, well, if you board wants me to continue to submit a report for next week, it's fine. I'm happy on it, but I think it's really, I go back, it's a chance for us to step back and decide how we want to run the office. And I don't think personally that's the kind of question that's properly set before a search firm.
Okay, thank you. You know, I agree with many of your points. The job description that we've gotten and that you're putting together would be very helpful. I note in the process, the search process, there's going to be several touch points where we can examine the position and whether or not we think it might be good in 2 positions or 3. So all of those things you mentioned are built in to this. And I don't see Debbie taking a back seat in this process. I would think that she would take a front seat, both up front, and we could even invite her to review our short list of candidates. But those things remain to be seen. I think that we've got a good strategy here. I don't quite know what you mean by Debbie would hire her replacement.
I didn't say hire her replacement. I said that I think that a village clerk, one of their responsibilities would be a much more supervisory responsibility, and have an assistant who would be helpful. For example, payroll.
I think we're talking about 2 different things that you said. You said that just like the chief does hiring for his department, you felt that Debbie should play a role in who she's replacing?
No.
Who's replacing her?
No, I didn't say that. I didn't mean that if I said it.
Oh, okay, no problem. So let's go around the horn. Trustee Gluck, do you have any comments? And I'll follow that with Trustee Cohn and Trustee McHugh, and then see if we can get Alan out of here.
Sure. I think I don't have a problem with asking Arias about whether they would do this and what it would cost, but I think that an alternative way to approach this would be for us to reach out to people we know in law firms and other municipal accounting firms on a sort of who do you know basis, as well as contacting perhaps NICOM. The relevant clerk authorities often have job boards as well. Not to mention Indeed is also a fantastic resource for soliciting, for looking at resumes. And I think we may find that we have a pretty good, pretty robust set of responses in that area that we could take a look at.
Yeah, I totally agree. That's a smart idea. We can, unfortunately, I went on NICOM the other day. They don't have a job board anymore, but checking around, doing our due diligence, see if we can get, 5, 10 candidates would be great before we would have to make a move. And then reviewing those resumes also is a very good experience in the sense that we can see who's out there, what the market value is, and if we can see this dividing up into more than 2 positions, et cetera. I think it's a great idea. Let's do that. But I'd like to hear first from Trustee Cohn and McHugh.
Okay, so my comments on this is, I'm not sure I would choose, first of all, I've got a big question about whether we need somebody to pay somebody to help us hire a clerk or a village clerk, or however we design the position. I'm not sure we need to hire someone to do that, considering there's like over 15% unemployment in this area right now. So I think that the candidates will be popping out of the woodwork for us. But that's number one. Number two, even if I were to hire somebody, I'm not sure I would hire an accounting firm to be involved in the search process. I don't think they have any real experience in that area. Yes, they sort of know what the role involves for sure, but that's not their natural bailiwick to involve search. Your proposal also lacks some details that I think we need to include, which is, first of all, I disagree with hiring Cooper or anybody to help us, but I think that we need to set out who's on the search committee, what's the search committee's mandates, what's the timing of the search committee. All that needs to be in this process, in your process outline that's not there right now. And again, I agree that there's a ton of resources out there to hire people, a ton of resources online that are free that we could utilize. And I'm really not comfortable spending money hiring somebody to oversee this process, since I think that you've got particular expertise, for instance, in the employment sector. And I think a lot of us have, hired plenty of people in the past that we know how to do this. And we did the police search without hiring a third party as well. So that's
No, I appreciate that. In fact, because of my HR experience, this is why I want to put this over to an entity to conduct the search. Until we talk with Arius, we're really just shooting in the dark here. They may or may not be capable of doing this or be interested. In my own business, I've gotten 3 of my controllers from my accounting firm. These guys are in the know. They meet with villages and municipality towns all over, and may be aware of someone, sort of in the same vein that Trustee Gluck was mentioning. And we could certainly ask them if they have any candidates first, or know of anybody we should meet with before we would discuss retaining them. But for the very reason that this is such a serious position for us, as all are, I do favor farming it out. But that's to be discussed. This is just a proposal, and I appreciate those comments. And I agree with some of what you're saying. Trustee McHugh?
My comments are, one is we haven't, in the whole budget process, we did not budget to outsource the hiring an agency to get that. So that's one issue. Second ip is I'm not a fan of Arius, given our attempt to engage them over a year ago, and it basically an unmitigated disaster with regard to asking them to help define what was going on within village office, and that they weren't able to accomplish it. And then after 3 months, we disengaged that process. And after we, voted to engage them, I wasn't particularly impressed with that. I completely agree. We use them as a resource, reach out to them, see if they know of any people that might be available, and we go down that path. I'm a huge fan of that, but my gut tells me this is something, bringing somebody else in, getting them up the learning curve just doesn't make sense to me. And, my gut is we need, there's so many things we need to get done, given we've got a very short time period, given Debbie's talking about leaving in September. I think let's see what Alan comes up with. Then we're going to have to figure out what the wage packages are and everything. And then, I think we advertise, and I think it's going to be an iterative process. I think we're going to meet different people, and that'll clarify in our own mind what we want or don't want. And it's going to be an evolution more than something concrete and leaving it to somebody else to do. But, I wish it was a simple thing, because Debbie does so many things for the village and has. Her institutional knowledge is amazing. I mean, I think the first thing is we need to offload things from her current job description and get her very much involved in this whole process.
Yeah, no, thank you. I agree with our last experience with Arius. Unfortunately, I had the same feeling you did. One of the other things, and then we'll move on, we're a board of 5 people, and we have temporary custody of the village. And this is such a big hire. Debbie interfaces with everyone in the park constantly, and customer service and things of that nature that Debbie has established are going to be key. And I'm not sure that the board wants to take the feedback from the village residents as to our choice, because this choice, the next board and the next board and the next board after are going to have to live with. And I'm not sure that as temporary guardians of the village, we want to take on that full responsibility. Obviously, we would do the interviewing and make the final decision to do the negotiations. But this is, again, why I see a benefit to a third party where they are running the front end of the process, not the back end. That would be us. But that's what I was thinking as well. I just wanted to share that with you. So if I may, what I'm going to recommend then is that I'll go back and take your comments into consideration and send out another update of the draft.
Great,
I
thank you.
mean, that's fine by me. And then, hopefully we can incorporate whatever Alan comes up with for next, the regular Board of Trustee meetings, and then we can create an amalgam of what we think the right path forward is. That's fine by me.
Yeah, terrific. How about the rest of you trustees? Is that
Perfect.
acceptable?
Perfect.
Okay, good. All right, thank you, Alan. It's 11:19. You're
Okay.
doing well.
Okay.
Okay, so let me, did you have one more thing to say, Alan?
Nope.
Okay. So is everyone ready to move on to the budget memo?
Well, I think do we want to do the employee performance review process, Alan?
Oh, gosh, I'm so sorry. It's my
no,
dyslexia.
no.
Yes, let's do that first, please. Can we send a copy to Brian?
I sent it to John.
Excuse me, to John?
John, you should have
If I have a
received.
copy, I will share now.
Okay.
Excuse me.
So this week I presented at the last regular meeting, I think it was, but could have been a special meeting, I forget. And
Trustee Cohen, do you mind if I just introduce the topic?
oh, sorry.
So, and plus you need to take a break after that long marathon. We performed for the first time performance reviews for our non-union employees, with the exception of the chief. And as I mentioned in the last meeting, we did that because we want to establish a means of promotion and salary increases, as well as a way to manage an employee file if there's something in there that we don't approve of. To build these files for the next board and the board after that, and start something. And I guess I've been at this for a while, but I don't think any board has ever given a performance review to the employees. And I think all of us felt it was long overdue. And so we had our first reviews this year, and we had some bumps in the road. So I think that the idea here is to develop a quick, down and dirty schedule and what should go into the employee reviews. And I think potentially put that into a resolution. I'm not positive that's the direction that Maureen's looking for. But all that said, Maureen, do you want to pitch in and then we'll go around the horn?
Yeah, yes, great. And that is the direction. What you said, I totally agree with. But that is the direction that we should just nail down the process so we're all on the same page, and then it's memorialized for future boards as well as our own board. Okay, so I sent this around and we discussed it a little bit. The one change that I made from the first version I sent out is that the performance review shall be completed annually in the month of, I had written May, everybody suggested January, February. I thought February, again, the performance reviews can be done slightly before that, but they should be completed by February of each year. So you guys have had an opportunity to look at it. And if you want me to go through each of the items, I gladly will. So just let me know, should I go through it or just make general comments?
I think we've all read it.
Good.
My general comments are, I like it, and I think it makes sense. Now, were you able to pass out the template for the review?
You mean the performance review template? No, I did not pass that out because, but I gladly will again, because we looked at it a bunch of different times. But I'll definitely send out that template.
Maybe we can think about it till the next meeting, but I'm inclined to pass a resolution putting this into the record. Maybe there's a couple comments I might have before the next meeting, but nothing substantive. So, I'd like to look at the template and, and then move forward with it at the monthly meeting next week.
Okay, great. Does anybody have any comments or questions, or you can send to me after the meeting if you think of anything. And again, I will send out the blank template.
Yeah, I mean, my comments is, we spent a lot of time putting together a template, I guess, last year now. So I think we should all be on the same page and agree what the template is and not deviate from that template. With regard to the performance review process, I think there also needs to be far better communication with the employees with regard to what the review process means and how they're compensated, and that this is part of the budgeting process versus a one-off. So I do think there needs to be clarity that, they're reviewed, their compensation is a function of lobbying by the different respective department heads to the board and within the constraints of what the village budget is. So that would be my other comment, and that the employees know that it's compensation is a function of the board more than it's the function of the compensation of the board and what goes into the budget.
Terrific. How about you, Trustee Barnett?
I think your idea to revise it with some thoughts is fine, and discuss it and finalize it next week.
Trustee Gluck.
Yeah, I think having a policy is a good, and it's a plus, because it sort of sets forth what you're doing and how you do it. I think that's always a good thing to do. I think this is fine. I don't think I have any comments on it, other than we should specify, should spell out, if we're adopting it as a policy, we shouldn't leave it as certain key employees. We should specify the employees subject to the policy, and obviously it wouldn't apply to people covered by a collective bargaining agreement. Aside from that, let's fine tune it and adopt it.
Oh, okay, thank you. And of course, we don't want to be too specific because then the resolution will just get changed by the next board. So maybe we should just be, let's hit the main points. And again, even that, the next board could change the resolution. But all right, great. So are we ready to move on? Okay, let's discuss the budget memo. This, if I may, last week, board members felt that we needed to tie a bow around the budget process, and recommended a draft of a communication to the village, and we then passed that around for comment. And I believe, Maureen, are you the main writer of that memo?
I am, yes, the main writer.
Okay. And so I also wrote a memo. And so we're going to have that discussion now as to what we'd like to put out. So why don't I give you the floor, Maureen, and then we'll go around.
Sure. So the draft that I put together for comments for the board basically just laid out the budget process. The budget process is confusing, even to board members, if you ask me. I laid out what the budget process was in a nutshell, and then I discussed the final budget where we came out, that it represents a 1.18% year-over-year increase in the tax rate. And then I just explained, okay, how did we get I explained that the preliminary budget is by no stretch intended to be a final budget, but it's a work in progress. We have deadlines that have to be met, and something has to be put out for public comment. And from that preliminary budget, I explained that we got down to 1.18%, and how we got there by revenue increases. And also by the main thing, frankly, was the increase in the allocation of the unallocated surplus, which really was most of the plug to get it down to 1.1%. But we also had expenditure reductions and also increases in user fees. So that's the budget memo in a nutshell. It is you know, it's a little wordier than a couple lines, but I think that, in my opinion, the public needed, they were so involved in the budget process this year, raised so many good points, brought us, you know, opinion that was very, very useful, at least to me, and I believe to others, that I felt that we should send something out that's pretty detailed so that people can follow exactly what happened. So that's it in a nutshell.
Okay, Trustee McHugh.
Can I go first? I have to go.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, I agree with Maureen. I read the memo. I support what she says, and for the reasons she just stated. So this is a client meeting, so okay.
Oh, thank you very much. Thank you for joining us. Trustee McHugh.
Yeah, I mean, my overall view is it's good to send something like this out so people understand what exactly the process was, because I do agree with Maureen. There was a lot of misunderstanding both by the public and by the board of the process and how we came up with our end budget. So I actually think this is really constructive and think it would be fabulous if going forward, every board sent this out at the end of the budget process so people got a far better understanding of what the process is and what the outcome is. So overall, I thought it was a well-written document. I don't think it was, some flowery prose, but otherwise I liked it, and I think you do need greater granularity and detail because a lot goes into this process.
Thank you. Trustee Gluck.
Sure. I didn't think it was all that lengthy. I mean, if you take off the banner, it's maybe a page. So
I didn't understand you.
I said I didn't think it was all that lengthy. I think if you take off the banner on the front, it's just about a page. Although I would like to find a different script for the signature line there. It's a little too flowery for me. Aside from that, I thought Maureen's draft struck the right balance between detail and succinctness. I think we needed a little bit more detail than some of the messaging that had gone out in terms of what the drivers were and what the process is. This is what we did, this is where we came to, and this is where we wound up. And I think it lays it all out there very well, very fairly, in a very balanced way. And I liked it. Thank you.
So the marching orders at the last meeting were to collect comments from all of us. And I sent in 2 drafts. One was very short, and the other was what I would call a compromise between the 2 long versions. I think giving the information to the village in terms of the actual tax rate and so forth at the end of all this is excellent. The last memo that I sent just said that we made it below the cap, and it does require a follow-up email, I believe. I think that when it comes to the narrative of mine and yours, I think there's a little bit of disagreement with each other. Is that a fair way to pose the question on the narrative? I mean, I have a different way of narrating the sausage aspect of this than you do, I think. Is that a fair statement? Maureen?
I don't know how to characterize it, but I didn't agree with your comments. I think that
I'm trying to soft pedal it.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think it's fair to say we both disagree with each other's narratives. One thing that I'd like to do, I had mentioned this to you, Maureen, last week, I think, but whenever I do a memo that has to do with numbers, budget numbers and so forth, I always send it to Debbie to do a fact check. And I believe I suggested it to you. If I didn't, I think that's something we should do. Make sure all the numbers are accurate, all the additions accurate. And then we can be confident that when we send it out, it's 100%. So my recommendation would be to have Debbie do that fact check on the numbers, and then we can just vote next week at the meeting to send it out or not send it out.
Can I suggest that we vote to send it out and then subject to any changes that Debbie thinks are necessary from a fact perspective? But I'm pretty confident in the numbers since I took them from Debbie's spreadsheet.
So
So,
you would like to you would like to vote on yours?
Yeah, I'd like to vote on ours today and get it out as soon as possible.
Okay, let's vote on all three.
What's all three? I'm sorry.
Well, I have 2 drafts in play and you have 1.
Oh, okay, I see. Okay.
Yeah. So I'd like to make a motion that the Board of Trustees email the mayor's short version of the follow-up budget memo, and subject to Debbie's fact checking the numbers. And I will also put this into the record for the future. May I have a second? Is everyone's mic off?
No.
May I have a second? All right, so let the record show that the board was unwilling to consider mine, and they will go with their own, even though this was supposed to be a group effort. Okay, Maureen,
Sorry,
you're welcome
I'm
to.
not even sure which document we're referring to.
I sent out 2, thank you, Alan. I sent 2 documents out. The first one you have a copy of, and it's basically a newsletter from all of us, which ties up the results of the budget and has a dedicated paragraph to what the new tax rate will be and so on and so forth. That was sent out first. And then yesterday, I think I sent out a compromise version. That was my name for it, compromise version, where I kept the narrative in, but put my own comments there. And this is the one that Maureen referenced earlier that we both referenced that we had a little bit of a difference of opinion, how that narrative should be written. So I thought we would vote. So I asked to vote on mine and then
Right,
yours.
so which one first one you're asking to vote on is the one you sent on Thursday, I believe, version 3, is that correct? All right, which is short and sweet.
Correct.
And, okay, so that's issue number 1, where the summary items are included, but there's no descriptors, and it's a paragraph. The summary on yours and Maureen's is identical. It's just with regard to increasing clarity is a slightly different with regard to unallocated surplus, I think. Am I wrong in that, Maureen?
No, you hit it on the head. And basically, the narrative that I suggested and the narrative that Maureen suggested, it's really about sausage making. So I just don't know if it's required. So I made my suggestions.
Sorry, I'm getting confused again now. Okay, the first one that we're talking about is a very brief memo that you wrote, basically saying version 3, basically laying out the facts. There's no misleading statements in there. There's no bias statements in there. There's nothing about the budget process. That's the first one.
That's what I tried to do. Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, that is the one that we're talking about right now, that
Correct.
I have fully considered, and for reasons we discussed, I am not willing to second a motion because I'm not in agreement with that version either, although that is way more palatable than the second version you sent. But that version, in my opinion, is deficient because it doesn't give a description of exactly what changed, etc., which I think is the important content. So that's my objection to. I've absolutely considered it because you said we didn't consider it, but I absolutely considered it, and I'm not interested in putting it forward.
Right.
Well, there's
but
considering, and then there's voting. You know, I mean, is there any doubt that you're going to vote against it and win?
I don't think this is the discussion right now, right? Nobody wants to even entertain that, is what I'm hearing as a second. So we should just move, right?
I think that we need to do this in a transparent and public way. And you asked for comments, I sent them, and we have a difference of opinion in which version to send out. And it's appropriate to vote, if assuming we're going to vote on yours. Do you anticipate we're going to vote on yours and approve it or not approve it?
Yes, but Mac, normally we don't necessarily go through all the changes that people go through because, you know, there's typos and other things. So there's some reason you want to do this. I'm not really sure because all we need to really vote on is the version we're going to send out. So we're not willing to go forward on the first memo. There's somebody that doesn't want to do, no one wants to second it. I'm not sure why we're even discussing it. But then I would just move on to your next memo that you changed, you proposed, which is your comments on the original memo that I sent out. So if you want to vote on that, fine, but I think we can just discuss it and you can, I've asked for my memo to be voted on. So I think we should just do that.
And as did I.
Okay.
But I understand where you're coming from. It's very clear. So since no one will second my motion, let's move on to yours because I'm sure no one will second my motion on the other one. So why don't you do a vote on yours? And that's what the record will show.
Okay, that's fair. Okay, I'm just looking for the date on it. Sorry. I don't have the title of it. Just give me 2 seconds. I have to just pull up the proper title. Budgets. Okay.
By the way, just before we move on, I assume that Maureen is speaking for the trustees?
No. No,
Okay.
I'm making a motion. I'm not
Do the
speaking for-
trustees have any comment before we move into your motion?
Yeah. I mean, my comment is your memo final budget summary dated May 7th, 2020, version 3. I have absolutely no problem with it, except I don't think it is insightful enough with regard to giving the populace a better understanding of the process and how we were able to get underneath the tax cap. So that's in my personal opinion, that's the shortcoming of that one. The iteration you sent last night, I just disagree with the interpretation of the facts, and I just took umbrage with that one. So with the first one, I actually didn't have a problem with. I just didn't think there was enough granularity. Second one, I just disagreed with. Marines, I'm more than happy if there's things that you find offensive that need to be changed or you think are unfair. I have absolutely no qualms if there's something along those lines that we can all agree to, but I think hers is probably a good summary of the process and how we got to the outcome on April 30th. That would be my 2 cents.
No, I appreciate your candor. Very helpful. Trustee Cohn, I like Alan's approach there. Do you want to work with me through until the next meeting and see if we can come up with something that we both find mutually acceptable in terms of the narrative, taking from Alan's point, to keep the narrative, but to do a little back and forth with each other to see if we can get to some sort of neutral ground on our narrative?
I would love to say yes, but this has been 2 weeks since the budget was passed. I don't know what the big deal is here. There's nothing, these are all factual statements. I think, Mac, you're trying to color it a different way for your own benefit. And I don't think that is not what I'm trying to do. I'm laying out the facts. So I would normally say, of course I'll work with you to get to a compromise. I don't think we're going to get to a compromise because your approach was so different. I don't think we should talk about this anymore. I think we should just get a memo out to the public. Everyone seems to agree without voting that the memo that I put together was accurate. It gave the right balance of detail, and we should just get that done. I mean, I don't understand what, besides yourself, everybody else, I apologize, agree to that. So I really think we're wasting our time here. We should just get this memo out. It's not biased. It's accurate. It's not misleading. So I make a recommendation that we adopt a resolution to approve the memo that I put out, the explanation of final budget, May 6th. And
I'd like to comment before you, if I may. I was trying to be a little more diplomatic by saying that we had a difference of opinion with each other's narratives, but you did mention that I'm doing it for my own benefit. So I'd like to respond. I think that that could be said about yours as well. I didn't want to say that, but that is a fact in terms of what I meant by saying that we disagreed on each other's narratives. So I just want to add that to the record. I mean, I think you feel that I'm doing it for me, and I feel you're doing it for yourself.
I assure you, my attention is not. It doesn't even mention me in here at all. But anyway, let the public. Let's put the resolution out, and the public can decide.
Can I just make a comment? I think what we're all trying to do is, it's not for self-aggrandizement, it's for public education with regard to a process and how we came to the outcome we came to. That to me is the ulterior motive on this and nothing else.
I agree 100%. That's why I'm trying to make it neutral. And if we could just give it another day or two, I think we might have a better product.
I don't think another day or two is going to make it structure the way you want to structure it.
Well, it depends on how willing to compromise each of us are.
If you want to wait until the meeting on Thursday, fine. I mean, or whatever it is, we're having an exec. I don't
think
even know.
It's Wednesday. Oh, the next monthly meeting is Wednesday.
Well, I would say the special meeting. It should be something that we should get out. I think that there's a.
Well, that's tomorrow. The executive session is tomorrow.
No, I thought you said it's Friday.
Oh yeah. Sorry. Today, under all of this sequestering, every day to me is Blur's Day.
That's
with
a
100% chance of rain and gray skies. So yeah, it's Blur's Day. So just to make a note of that.
I would love to come to a compromise. If it means waiting till Blur's Day, tomorrow or Friday, for our special, I think that's fine. Although I think what I've written is factual, and let the public decide if they think it's biased. And please,
look,
public,
obviously, people that write their material feel they like to, it's justifiable, and that's fine. I just say maybe you and I can take another hour or two just to see if we can get to some sort of compromise, and then I think it'd be a better product.
Okay, but I really want to get this out by Friday. I mean, but really, we're 2 weeks behind. This is, in my opinion, this is a pretty easy thing to get out. So again, it's not just my writing. I think everybody else had said that they felt it was unbiased as well. So anyway, I'm willing to wait till Friday.
Well, I mean, I'll leave the final decision to you guys. I mean, it's my suggestion, and if you want to vote now and pass it, that's fine.
What do people think? What are people's views?
I think there's been. I'm reluctant to spend a lot more time on this, only because I think what has been created is actually quite a fair and balanced and informative page of dialogue with respect to the budget, and something that the public should hear in the very near future, because we've just completed this process. And I don't want to have it, I don't think it's good to have it linger on that much longer, or have another board discussion on it on Friday, because this is, again, something else that is taking more time than it really should take, in my opinion. Others may differ on that. So
yeah, I understand. It's been, everyone's been very busy. There's been tons of meetings. Sometimes.
Right. So what I would maybe suggest for folks to consider is, if they want to vote on this to go out with such changes as Maureen Cohen would like to be agreeable to making in it. I don't know if you'd want to take on that responsibility, Maureen, but you'd prefer not to? All right, then I withdraw the suggestion. One way to get it, done and in process, and leave the flexibility for some changes in there. But other than that, I'm personally prepared to either say, let's get this out now, or if folks want, wait till Friday as a, as a, an introduction to the executive session. We can authorize it then.
Again, this is, to me, spending way too much time on something that's an accurate portrayal of what happened. And not even a portrayal of what happened. It's just stating the process and the facts. But Alan McHugh, your view.
My view is this is about as impartial a document as possible. I don't think it's casting aspersions on anything. I think it's purely educational and informative. I'm not sure how it would be changed that would make it additive. So my gut is, unless David has something specific that he's looking at and going, that is unfair characterization, but to me it's all factual, and that's, I believe, what your intent in this whole thing was, to create a factual document to enlighten the voting public as to how we achieved the goal. And I personally believe this document achieves it and is impartial. So I'm supportive of voting on it now, unless there's something that David said, that's flat out mischaracterization. But I just don't see that in this current document.
Yeah, no, thank you. No, I hesitate to make an accusation or get specific. It's just, in general, we have two different views of the narrative. And I would recommend then that we at least have Debbie fact check the numbers. So make your passage of the memo subject to Debbie checking on some of the numbers, doing a little fact check, which I would advise for both of ours if we were to send mine or the version you've written.
I completely agree. I did text Debbie. She says she has not fact checked the document completely yet, and she's in the process of doing that, just as FYI.
Thank you.
Okay, I make a motion that the document summarizing the budget, referred to as explanation of final budget May 6th, be approved by the board and distributed by the village clerk as soon as there is confirmation that the numbers contained in the memo are accurate. Do I have a second?
Second.
I'll call the roll. Trustee McHugh.
Aye.
Trustee Cohn.
Aye.
Trustee Gluck.
Yes.
All right, so I'm not going to stand in your way, obviously, so I'll just abstain. And let's move to the next topic. All right,
Excellent.
Thank you. So let's see, what do we have next? We have the clerk. We did that already, didn't we? What do you guys see next on the agenda? Just so
I think that's it.
Well,
You just need to identify a time for your executive session on Friday.
Right. Yeah, no, that's great. I'm still waiting for Brian to give me a window of times. I emailed him. I'm sure he'll get back to us if we could be a little bit flexible. I will, I'm sure that John will contact him. We're looking for an availability for Brian to come into our executive session on Friday.
Okay.
And so we'll wait till that. So for now, yeah, please.
Sorry. If we could avoid, I'd really appreciate it. If we could avoid from 11 to 1:30 on Friday, that block of time, that would be very much appreciated.
Yeah, let's try and do that. Anyone else have a urgent window?
Not I.
Paul?
No, I'm good.
You're good? Okay, so
Laura-
just email me that. I'm sorry, John, can you take note of that Maureen
Yep,
has
I
a
will.
specific window? Okay, thank you very much. All right, so I want to thank everyone that's attended the public meeting. We're going to go into an executive session now. So thank you for attending. I move that we adjourn to executive session to discuss the employment of particular persons, a particular person. May I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so Paul, you're going to put us into a
I am.
Private room? Yes? And I would like to propose that we adjourn this meeting. May I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
All right, see you Friday.